Happy Tuesday, folks, and welcome back to WrestleRant, where every single Tuesday right here on the show I break down all the pay-per-views and live specials I watch on the WWE Network. Continuing along with the NXT theme from the past few weeks, today we are talking NXT TakeOver Respect from October of 2015. A very underrated takeover in my personal opinion. Thoroughly enjoyed the show, watching it back the first time, I've watched it back a number of times, just recently to review for this WrestleRant episode, but when I watched it the first time live with RJ, had a blast. The show is really, really good. Watching it back reaffirms it as, I don't want to say one of my top 5 takeovers. There's been a lot of great takeovers, 3 of which I've been there for, so I'm not sure if it's my favorite. But it would be up there. I think this takeover was very underrated because it wasn't in Brooklyn or London or Dallas or here or there. But it was a really good takeover and one of the final few takeovers to take place to emanate from Full Sail University. I think we had Respect in Full Sail. Like I said, they were in London after that, which I'll talk about next week. Or no, next week I'm talking about Hell in the Cell, I think. Anyway, so we had TakeOver Respect in Full Sail, which was this week. And then TakeOver London, and then TakeOver Dallas. And then The End, which was also in Full Sail in June of 2016. Brooklyn 2, San Antonio. No, they had Toronto, then San Antonio. The one in Orlando, Chicago, Brooklyn 2, and now they have Houston coming up. So they have not been back to Full Sail for a takeover since The End, but this was the second to last takeover to take place in Full Sail, which is crazy because all those early takeovers took place at Full Sail. But anyway, great show. They kicked off the night with the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic semifinal match with NXT champion Finn Balor and Samoa Joe teaming up against the Mechanics. Yes, this was before they became known as Dash and Dawson, the Revival, whatever you know them as. Scott Dawson and Dash Wilder. Very good match. Finn Balor and Joe were only really put in the tournament. They had a couple good matches, including the finals, which I'll talk about momentarily, so spoiler alert in terms of the result of this match. But really, they were only put in the tournament to further their own feud, further their story, heading into Joe demanding a title shot at the NXT Championship, heading into the next takeover. So that was really the only purpose they served heading into that next takeover, and the only reason why they were in the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic to begin with. But it was cool that this theme, that the show had a theme of tag team wrestling, which is rare in WWE and really in wrestling in general nowadays. Tag team wrestling does not get the respect, pun intended, it deserves. And it hasn't for a long time now. So it was cool that we got 3 tag team matches on this takeover. But anyway, good match. Dash and Dawson looked very good here. This was one of their early appearances on NXT TV, and on a takeover no less as well. It was obvious that Balor and Joe were winning, of course, but I thought Dash and Dawson held their own. They showed potential. They would go on to win the NXT tag titles no more than a month later on TV. But it was cool to see them kind of get some offense in on the champion and the number 1 contender Samoa Joe in a good opening match. After that, another Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic semifinal tournament match between Baron Corbin and Rhino versus Jason Jordan and Chad Gable. Now, Jordan and Gable had been teaming for a few months. They had a few on-air appearances. They were slowly gelling. They talked all about it, and I've talked about it before as well, on Breaking Ground, which I reviewed last year on WWE Network and Chill Cheap Plug. But Jordan and Gable, before they were known as American Alpha, were just slowly finding their chemistry together. And they kind of clicked right off the bat, but they had yet to get a real marquee match on NXT. And they were still heels, I believe, too. So having 2 heel tag teams go at it was a bit weird at first, but it turned to one of the better matches of the entire night. Like, I would call this one of the more underrated takeover matches of all time. Like, that's how good this was. And Baron Corbin was, again, still finding his footing as a singles competitor. Teaming with Rhino, I thought, was for the best. They got a lot of experience working with a seasoned veteran like Rhino, who looked great here, too. Corbin and Rhino, a very underrated tag team. Jordan and Gable stole the show at their showing here. I thought they looked great in defeat. The finish itself was fantastic. Gable went for, I don't know, a DDT or something. Baron Corbin caught him in midair and hit him with the End of Days, and one of the coolest End of Days, if not the coolest End of Days, I've ever seen. The match was freaking great. But yeah, I would say the best match of the entire tournament of the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic. And the first one did not produce many gems. All the matches were at best solid, at worst forgettable. They weren't bad, they just were kind of missable. But I thought this match was easily the best of the entire first annual Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic, including the finals, which was also really good, but I thought this bout was better. And a real star showing, a real standout showing for Jordan and Gable, who would come into their own eventually as baby faces and go on to win the NXT Tag Team titles by TakeOver Dallas the following year, despite losing in the tournament. After that, we had the in-ring debut of Asuka taking on Dana Brooke. So it has been almost exactly 2 years since Asuka made her in-ring WWE debut, or technically NXT in-ring debut, but nonetheless, a great match, which is weird considering that Dana Brooke was involved. That's weird to say about a Dana Brooke match, who had only been around for, in her credit, a few months by this point. She debuted, I think, in March of that year in NXT TV. And she worked a few matches with Emma as her partner and against Sasha Banks and Charlotte and a few others. She wasn't good. She still sucks. But to her credit, she got the best match of her career from Asuka in this match. I thought it was really, really good. And people that were familiar with Kana, Asuka, whatever you want to call her prior to this point, probably knew what to expect out of her. She had debuted as a major star, the biggest women's signing up to that point in the company's history, and probably still up, to this day. But we had yet to expect, we didn't know really what to expect. We weren't sure what to expect out of Asuka in the ring when she debuted on this takeover, but she blew everyone away with what she could bring to the table here. Her hard-hitting offense, Brooks sold for her perfectly. It was great. I'm pretty sure Brooks suffered a concussion in this match, if I'm not mistaken, which, again, I think was touched upon in Breaking Around. Check out my review of the show from about a year ago. But again, a really, really good women's match. 2 women's matches on the show. The main event was a women's match, which I'll get to at the end. But a great showing from Asuka and Dana Brooke. Both women impressed here. And this would later lead to Asuka and Emma taking place at the TakeOver London show, which we'll talk about. Again, not next week. I think the week after. I think next week I'm talking Hell in a Cell. Hell in a Cell 2016, I think. I'm not sure. Anyway, so after that we had Apollo Crews versus Tyler Breeze, 1-on-1. Real good match. I mean, the feud kind of came out of nowhere. Crews had been building up momentum, beating jobbers in NXT TV. I think this was before he contended for the NXT Championship. I think he would go on to win a Battle Royal to become the number 1 contender to the title soon after this. But Breeze was on his way out. I think he worked one more match with Samoa Joe on TV in the Battle Royal too, in the aforementioned Battle Royal to crown a new number 1 contender to the championship. Lost both bouts, lost here, and then moved on to the main roster, which he would be pretty much buried there. But anyway, at least he went out swinging. He went out with very good showings against Samoa Joe in the Battle Royal and here as well against Apollo Crews. A very athletic outing from Apollo Crews, showing off his skills. And just an overall good match and a good win for Apollo Crews. After that, the finals of the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic, Finn Balor and Samoa Joe taking on Baron Corbin and Rhino. Again, real good match. This was included on the Best of NXT Volume 1 DVD that came out a few years ago. That, again, I reviewed here for the channel. Check it out if you haven't already, a few months back. But real good match. Corbin and Rhino were a great tandem. Balor and Joe. And the thing is, what's weird is that unlike last year when we had Authors of Pain and TM6-1 in the finals, which I think this match was better than that, but at least we had 2 regular tag teams in the finals. Now, people were kind of hung up on the fact that, Balor and Joe aren't a regular tag team. Corbin and Rhino are not a regular tag team. Corbin and Rhino broke up right after this, too, by the way. But at least it led to a good match. It had star power involved. And Balor and Joe, like I said, would later lead to them, feuding over the NXT Championship in the final few months of 2015, and eventually leading into 2016 as well. So I thought the match was good. And you kind of had to have the baby faces win the first ever Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic. The heels would win the next year, but you had to have the baby faces win because Cody Rhodes came out and Goldust and the entire Rhodes family presenting the trophy to Balor and Joe. It was a great moment, a very touching, emotional moment. And that led us to the main event, the 30-minute Iron Man match, or Iron Woman match, I would call it, for the NXT Women's Championship in a rematch from TakeOver Brooklyn a few months prior. Bayley, the defending champion, taking on Sasha Banks. Another phenomenal match. I still say their Brooklyn match was better. That's not saying much, just because that match was so freaking great, so it's hard to top it. But this match was also equally entertaining and equally exceptional. I thought, what I was hoping for was that they would go the full... they would go all WrestleMania 12, Shawn Michaels versus Bret Hart, and go the full 30 minutes without a single pinfall or submission when taking place. They'd have to go overtime, and then Bayley would win there. Because they talked about in the build-up to the bout, they talked about Bayley, watching old matches, watching old Iron Man matches. And by this point, we hadn't had an Iron Man match in WWE since, literally 2009, between Randy Orton and John Cena. So it had been a long time. We weren't sure what to expect, but we kind of did, knowing that these two women worked well together, very, very well together, obviously, from Brooklyn, that takeover a few months earlier. So the match was great. I thought, despite the fact it didn't go the full 30 minutes without a single fall until, the overtime, it didn't go the way that I had hoped. But the layout was still really, really good. Sasha Banks took the first win after pinning Bayley with a roll-up. Bayley evened it up by pinning Sasha Banks with a Bayley-to-belly suplex. After that, Sasha Banks took the second victory with a count-out win over Bayley after Bayley was just beating the shit out of on the outside. Sasha threw into the lighting wall and all this other stuff that looked vicious. And that was where I think she made Izzy cry on the outside, which was freaking glorious, by the way. Bayley tied it up with a Rana, and after that, Bayley won the entire match in the final few seconds, literally the final 2 seconds of the match, by forcing her to submit with a modified armbar. Kind of a play off what we saw in Brooklyn when Sasha Banks was trying to force Bayley to tap out, and she couldn't, and she was smashing her arms with her legs, and she was kicking her arms and her hands and shit. But her broken hand, by the way, in storyline. But just the match was great. I thought the layout was phenomenal. The emotion here was great. The crowd was invested. Again, not quite TakeOver Brooklyn levels, but it was up there. It was still one of the best matches of the year in WWE from two great women. A match that deserved to close the show, and I'm very happy it did. And to close out and culminate a very, very good TakeOver. And we would also get the celebration and the honoring of Sasha Banks. This was her final match in NXT on TV, and she would officially embark to the main roster after this. And then Bayley would go on to become a great defending champion over the months that followed as the NXT Women's Champion. So, again, real good main event, really good TakeOver. One match to watch. If there was one match to see, it would be the main event, obviously. But after that, I would put Corbin and Rhino versus Jordan and Gable, to be honest with you. I think that was a really, really good match. But the entire card is solid. I mean, you have the in-ring debut of Asuka, so it's pretty newsworthy for that reason as well. Cruz and Breeze, good match. The finals of the first ever Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic, the undercard was great. So for only 6 matches, this entire card was epic. I thought it was really, really well done. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And maybe look forward to the next TakeOver London, which we'll talk about in 2 weeks right here on WrestleRant. So 2 thumbs up. Check out TakeOver Respect on the WWE Network. Next week, as I said, I will be talking about barring any changes, however you pronounce it. I will be reviewing Hell in a Cell 2016, which I was in attendance for, so I will give my first ever on-site report on the show, which I have yet to do up to this point. I know I talked about it on a random video blog about a year ago, but I have yet to watch the full show back. I think I've seen parts back since I was there, but beyond that, I've never seen the full show on the network, because it wasn't that good of a show. So we'll see if a year of not watching anything from the show has enhanced my opinion of it, or maybe it was even worse than I originally experienced. I'm not sure, so we'll find out next week right here on WrestleRant. So anyway, guys, be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. We'll be back next Tuesday with another all-new episode of WrestleRant, but in the meantime, in between time, find me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant, on Facebook as well at facebook.com/graham.gsm.matthews, right here on YouTube by subscribing to the channel like I said, and checking out the website as well at nextairwrestling.net for my full written reviews of Raw, SmackDown, GFW, Impact, Ring of Honor, Lucha Underground, and much, much more. Anyway, guys, enjoy the rest of your week. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.